Good morning, everyone. It is 9 o'clock. We are here for our working session for our budget meeting today. Let the record reflect that all three commissioners are present, our executive management team, and I'm actually going to have us just go around the room and just say our name and titles for the record. So, Gary, I'll start with you.
Gary Petrovich, Senior Director of Finance and Administration.
Victoria Blumhorst, Director of Council for Defense.
Welcome.
Diane Mueller, I'm the office executive for Council for Defense.
Caitlin Erickson, I'm the business manager of the prosecuting attorney's office.
Larry Haskell, County Prosecutor.
Mark McLean, Chief Civil.
Scott Simmons, County CEO.
Mike Barber, Senior Director of Law and Justice.
Tina Vasquez,
Clinton Nipboy.
I'm Sean with IT.
You're still here.
It's on standby.
So it's all good.
Jared Webley with Communications.
Ashley Cameron, Senior Director of HR.
Kyle Tuick, Senior Director of Public Works.
Ron Valencia, Commissioner Kern's office.
Jeff McMorris, Community Engagement and Policy.
Josh Kearns, County Commissioner.
Al French, County Commissioner.
There we go. Thank you all very much. Thanks for joining us on our budget workshop. And Gary, I'm going to let you start.
Sure, thank you, Commissioners. This morning we have a slate of departments coming in to talk to the Commissioners about their supplemental budgets. Leading off here is Prosecutor Larry Haskell and his assistant Caitlin. Their base budget submitted for 2023 was $14,275,000. They're asking for supplemental requests in the amount of approximately $481,000. And I know that they have a slide presentation to show the board. So with that, Larry, I'll let you take it over.
And before, Larry, before you start, in our binder, can you tell me where?
Yes, there's FTE and M&O requests, which is about the fourth tab in. And then that gives you the summaries of all of the departments and what they're requesting dollar-wise. And then the next tab shows all of the detail for each of the departments. The previous tab also shows the number of FTEs in total for the general fund by department. So that would be the fourth tab in your booklet.
So if you want to go,
You gotta flip. You gotta flip really far in.
that's your supplemental.
They're in alphabetical order.
I'll give you
Okay.
the number is 25,00020 is the start of it on your
So
detail.
at the top, it says
At
agency,
the top.
and it'll say prosecuting attorney. See it? Or, well.
Yeah.
When you get
So keep going to 25,000. I'll come back a couple. 020 is the beginning. There you go, right there.
up at the top, department,
There you go.
and then below it says agency. That's several pages.
Okay. Very good. Just make sure we're all on the same page and we're need to get that tabbed. So thank you, Larry. I'll let you start.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thanks very much for having us this morning. I know that we all know the state of the economy, but we also know that crime's up in Spokane County. We're dealing with a lot more cases, and most especially in the first two topics that I want to talk about. And those are could be lumped together, domestic violence, a unit investigator, and domestic violence unit legal secretary. Until you actually put it on paper, it's hard to believe how much the DV unit in my office has grown since I took office. And prior to my being elected, and initially when I was elected, we had at the felony level, we had a unit supervisor and 2 DPAs to do the prosecution of DV crimes. We had a paralegal and 1 secretary. Since then, we have reorganized within our budget and within the resources available staff-wise in our office, and we now have 7 attorneys that are doing DV work. and we have one legal secretary and one paralegal. And they very easily fall behind, and they're overworked. And the DV problem, as you know, has spawned a number of movements within the community, including the End the Violence. The DV Coalition is working very hard to make the public aware. We're seeing increasing numbers of DV cases come in, and they are a leading cause of homicides. DV-related homicides are right up there with drive-by shootings and/or some of the gang activity that we've seen as an uptick in the recent months. It's difficult to ask a staff to continue to do the level in terms of the numbers and the quality of the work. If we miss something, there could be a serious public safety consequence as a result of that. So in order to maintain the efficiency, and the other thing is, and I know the board recognizes this, we're in the business of keeping people fully employed, and we expect certain things from people, but we're not trying to kill them at the same time. And the bottom line is the more that you stretch the ability of individuals to do this workload, the more likely they're going to miss something, the more likely that something is going to happen, and it's going to be a negative thing. So we are asking for an additional legal secretary. The paperwork has to be timely, it has to be accurate, and it's a long list. In addition to the fact that the DV unit has extra paperwork that other units don't have in terms of the protection orders and that sort of thing that need to be prepared and followed up with. So one secretary is just not cutting it right now. It's just too stressful. And I'm very concerned about losing something. So we're asking for a unit investigator. Now, what the unit investigator is we have Mike Barr over on the major crimes and gangs side, and what he does is he locates witnesses for us that are difficult to find. Sometimes they're actively trying to avoid service and serve subpoenas, and sometimes collects additional evidence to be turned over to law enforcement or advise law enforcement that additional evidence exists. So those types of positions are very important. In their own way, DV prosecutions are like gang prosecutions. You deal with reluctant witnesses. As we all know, that the DV power relationship that exists between the perpetrators and the victims is very real, and it's very dynamic, and it affects the likelihood of a successful prosecution. Having somebody be able to get out and serve the subpoenas on reluctant witnesses is going to be very helpful. In addition, that person need not only be active in the DV prosecutions, the DV service and that sort of thing, but over in the BCB, we also have our sexual assault unit that could use some investigative help as well, and service of subpoenas and location of witnesses as well. And then, of course, we have property drug, a little less so. Drug prosecutions in the state are down about 75% since the Blake decision. And so, there's not a great need there, but there certainly is in property, which property crimes have also at least maintained, depending on what month you're looking at, they're either up a little bit or down a little bit, but there's certainly not a trend of downward on property crimes either. So we're asking for one FTE for the DV unit investigator, but again, that person will serve all the units that are in the Broadway Center building currently, and also a DV violence unit legal secretary as well. In addition to that, we're looking to, and there's been some discussions between Human Resources and Caitlin. Caitlin's here. She is our business manager. She keeps me straight on the finances and making sure that we're following all the appropriate guidance that's being given out, not only by county policy, but also by Human Resources directly. The MOUs that we have in place right now are not favored. And so in multiple discussions with the Human Resources Department, we have elected to turn the MOUs that we have now for the 5%, you may or may not know about, that they get for supervising multiple units, that we replace those MOUs with the Attorney 3 lead designation. And I think budget-wise, that's neutral. It's not going to change how much money that we're spending. But it does away with the MOUs, and the fact is that these are people, and I listed them by name currently, that are supervising more than one unit, and or they're also working special projects that come up that may involve evening work as well as the time that they're going to spend here in the county during the normal business hours. So we're asking the board to approve 5. And I don't know, Caitlin and or Ashley may have something to add to that. And then we've had extensive turnover at the non-attorney staff level, and we're constantly training. And the problem is when you have multiple people training new people, you're not going to get the consistency across the board. You're not going to get the efficacy across the board. And there's going to be less continuity. Someone will train someone a little different than someone else. Someone has a better skill set for the ability to train. And so we're not on an even keel. And we find that we have people that actually had a very good trainer, and we have some people that didn't have as good a trainer. So what we have worked out, and I believe this was in conversations with Human Resources as well, to have basically in the Broadway Center building 2 administrative assistants, one who is going to be the supervisor and is going to do all of the supervision, and a designated trainer who's been around for a while, who knows the way the county paperwork should flow, and will provide not only better training, but consistent across the board as well. So that we're going to have people that are going to come in with the same knowledge because they're getting the training from the same person. So I think that's a much better way of doing business, and is so long as we have the rates of turnover that we have. I've never seen it worse. And it's got to do, and again, this is a reflection of what the county can afford to spend, but we have low wages. And we hire people that have, as I often say, 1 foot in and 1 foot out. They'll accept a job with the county while they're looking for something else. And it's true that our legal office assistants come in at a lower wage than the local fast food restaurants are offering. I'm not saying that that it's apples to apples, but that's the way they're looking at it, such as it is. So because of the rapid turnover and the fact that we haven't had that efficient training and the continuity that I'm looking for, so that one employee is getting the same or very, very similar to the extent humanly possible training when they come in the door, we decided that restructure the office internally would be more effective, and that we would achieve that goal of having people trained by somebody who not only knows the job, but who's going to provide that continuity and not have the variance of whoever's available just hopping in and trying to train somebody to do something. That's not the most effective way to do it. So that covers that. And then the 1.0, obviously nobody knows more than this board that you're going to have 2 new members come the first of the year. I'm speaking a little bit for Mark, but I'm sure that Mark would echo my comments. We're pretty full right now with the attorney staff that we have to represent the Board of County Commissioners, which is one of the most important functions that we have. And we're going to need 1 more person. It may actually be more, I don't know. But I know that we will not meet the needs of 5 county commissioners with the staff that we have now, when my staff is pretty full with 3. So it just reflects what the legislature has demanded of us, that we have 5 county commissioners in the county of Spokane, and we need to get proper representation. And I firmly believe that come the first of the year, there's going to be an increase in demand that justifies an attorney. I'm talking a senior attorney, or as they now call it, attorney 3. Somebody with the experience and the skills to be able to represent the board competently. So those are our requests and the justifications that I can get off the top of my head. We can run through those slides if you want to flip them forward, Ron. I appreciate it. So some of the points that we cover in this slide here, domestic violence in Spokane County. I kind of summarized some of what we know, but we have this unfortunate designation of having the highest rate of DV in the state of Washington. And as I pointed out, domestic violence is a leading cause of homicides in Spokane County. And in fact, one of the officer-involved shootings that I went to that occurred in Airway Heights was a guy that was involved actively in DV, and he was escalating with his victim. And he was willing to take on the police in a shootout to avoid being taken into custody. And the last time that he was at the victim's house, he had actually fired a weapon. He had previously beaten her with the weapon, and things were escalating rapidly. And then he was confronted by the police when they tried to take him, and he pointed a gun at officers, and he had to shoot. Yes, sir.
So, based upon the work that you've done and the interactions you've had, any observation that you can offer as to why we are leading the state in the level of DVs? Is there something about going on in the community that we ought to be aware of, or is there something that is unique about Spokane that would say this is a problem for us?
You know, Commissioner, I don't know that anybody has isolated a single thing. A lot of these incidents are spurred by alcohol, other drugs, and kind of what we see, on the street generally is we have co-occurring disorders, and they get into these, these domestic relationships, and when things explode, they don't necessarily explode in a rational way. I don't know, even through the DV Coalition, that they have identified a singular cause of why it is. So that's why they push their awareness program. And we're working on a DV perpetrator court right now at the felony level, and have been for some time with the coalition. But I don't know that we have identified as a community a singular cause and say, okay, this is it, let's go after that. It's a combination of the factors that drive other crimes, but the fact that you have, when you have, the other crimes, you don't have the people in the same house, at the same time, and have that power dynamic, and when you have those basic things, and you're going to see those in types of relationships, and then when you add the spark, if you will, to the fuel that already exists there, you're going to get these kind of blow-ups. And I think what it has to do is with the proximity, as much as anything else, in terms of the other types of crimes, they need more, but it's almost like in its own way, I believe, is a personal opinion, not a professional one, but it's a convenient target for frustration. And if you're not sober, if you have an issue with anger management or temper, that sort of thing, it's easy to light off, and you have somebody right there to take out or vent your frustrations on.
Is it fair to say that this could be one of the side effects of COVID and the fact that we've had to isolate ourselves in a house with a partner 24/7, where before we didn't have to spend that much time together?
I don't have data, but we knew during COVID, when the courts shut down, that we would see an increase in reporting afterwards. Same thing with sexual assaults, and particularly as concerns sexual assaults on children. And again, because of that proximity, I think the proximity factor is a huge one, both in the area of sexual assault and also in intimate partner violence.
I will also note too, the documentary that the coalition put out, the End the Violence Coalition, Spokane Unites to Stop Domestic Violence, it aired on September 30th, 2019. So I think that COVID certainly was an exacerbator of the problem, but I think this was an issue in our community before COVID.
Before that.
Oh, no doubt about that.
so-
COVID was an exacerbator though, because when you're, you know, I use the term locked up, but when you're not really going anywhere where you used to, if there's some friction in the home, it's gonna be exacerbated by the fact that you're just there longer. And I'm, you know, likely to believe that some people have imbibed a little more as well. And as you know, inhibitions go away, and people with anger-related issues are, but again, you have somebody right there. So I think that's part of the dynamic of why TV is high, why it's here in Spokane, because those same dynamics exist in other
somewhere
communities.
else.
But honestly, Commissioner, I've never seen anybody actually say, here it is, this is the ticket that makes Spokane different. I have not heard that. Not even from my DV people or through the coalition. And we're always sitting on the board meetings for the Domestic Violence Coalition. And I got somebody there, one or two, every time. And they've never come to me and said, aha, we have the answer to why it's an issue in Spokane County. If I ever hear that, you will hear it from us immediately.
Okay, thank you.
And Commissioner French, just, I sit on the YWCA board as well, and I've been on it for 6 years now. And to Larry Haskell's point, there's really not a defining reason that we can point out in Spokane. You know, a lot of it, as we work with Domestic Violence Coalition with the YWCA, we're really starting to look toward, there maybe need to be more of a prevention model in Spokane than we've had in the past. Do we have enough of maybe the big brother, big sister programs? Are we in the schools enough? And so those are questions that the large organizations in Spokane are really looking at right now. We do, I think in Spokane, do a good job of making it easy to report violence and to support victims and help them get back on their feet. So that might be part of it, is that there is a very good safety net in Spokane where maybe you don't see that in some of the other locations. But it is a very large issue in our community, and it has been for many years. COVID did increase numbers. We did see increase specifically throughout that time to, again, Mr. Haskell's point, part of that I think was close proximity, but the other thing is the financial stressors that we saw come into play for people that were going through furloughs, losing their jobs, not having childcare, right? Having kids in the home for a lot more hours in the day creates stress and pressure. So we definitely did see an uptick. We're hopeful that as people start to regulate and kind of find life again a little bit more, that maybe we start to see a slowdown, but it always has been a problem in our community, and until we really can tackle the preventative well, I think we'll continue to see the response needed from the Spokane community to continue to support survivors and help them be empowered to no longer be victims in the future.
And I've heard that as well, that part of it is we actually do have a really good reporting model. And so versus other counties, and so that's maybe some of the reason why our numbers seem higher, because I think it's happening everywhere. And I think the more awareness you have, the more people then do start to feel empowered to report. And so those are all good things for us, but it makes our numbers appear higher than other communities.
And one other thing that has come onto our radar, it's not related directly to my budget request, but it is pertinent to the discussion about DV, and that is shelters for DV victims. We are short on shelters, and they need to have certain qualifications, including that they will be not a widely known location for any potential interference there. So I would make that pitch and for a discussion down the road for the county to assist in the sheltering of DV victims. So if there's no further questions at this point, we could roll to the next slide then. So there's the kind of the justification in writing for the DV unit investigator, but in effect, I expect that to be a broader responsibility than just DV. because we have, again, we have property over there in the special assault unit, and they have their own unique challenges in locating victims and seeking to get them subpoenaed to court, and also to facilitate thereby the prosecution and getting justice for victims not only of domestic violence but of sexual assaults as well. Next slide, please, Ron. The same thing, looking at the caseloads of the secretary, if we had one secretary when we had 3 lawyers to support, now that person has 7 lawyers to support. So it goes without saying that person is overworked, and we're lucky to have some continuity there. We haven't had anybody leave from that position in a while, and but we simply can't work people that hard and be that effective. And again, the critical part of it is if we drop the ball, if we don't have something done, if it's not done correctly, then maybe a protection order will be invalid, and somebody is going to take advantage. So it's just such a critical function that again we're just asking for to meet what the demand is out there. I mean, we have more than doubled the size of the DV unit in the last 8 years. And I have robbed from juvenile, and I have robbed from property, and you haven't heard me come asking for money. So, I'm doing it internally, and we just shift resources where we have to meet the need of the community. And there it is, more than doubled in the last 8 years. So it's time that we ask the board for some relief on that line. Next, so the attorney 3 lead, I talked about that. That's to get rid of the MOUs. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Is that the MOUs? Yeah, that's to get rid of the MOUs and still get them the pay that they deserve, but to satisfy current requirements that we don't have MOUs. So we have a designation.
So there was a time, probably not that many years ago, where the conversation was GU Law School was kicking out more attorneys than we could consume as a community. I don't know what the graduation rate is now at GU. Is that still at the level that it has been historically? And are we just now shipping more attorneys other places? Or what is the dynamic in the market for attorneys, especially entry-level attorneys that might be more prone to work for the county?
What's interesting about that is when I first took office, we had exactly what you described, Commissioner. But of late, what's been reported to me is we've had 3 openings in district court for some period of time. We have delayed moving people to felony simply because we got nobody coming in. We went 4 months or better without a single applicant of new attorneys. Now, we did get permission to pay some Rule 9s, and we put 2 on, and they recently, bar results were just reported within the last week or something like that. And so we were pleased that both of those attorneys passed their bar, and they're going to be licensed here pretty quick. And when they are, we're going to bring them into the office. The goal is to bring them into the office as attorney 1s. But it's been light, and a couple of candidates that were really, really good. I mean, in terms of strong background, did really well in law school, did well in the moot court system and that sort of thing. Took jobs at WinCash, places like that where they can walk in the door. They may not be at court as much. That to me was one of the big selling points, even though today I don't get to go into court very often. But one of the big selling points, if you become a prosecutor or public defender, you're going to be in court every day. And if you like the idea of being in court arguing for the cause, then that's the way to go. Young people today are looking more at the paycheck, and the paychecks for those firms are pretty healthy compared to what we can pay coming in the door. So it kind of comes and goes, but it's lower of late than it was pre-COVID even, I would say that. They're still graduating, a lot of lawyers, there's no question about it, but they're being very, very selective and very, very respectful of where they can make the money. And a lot of that has to do, as you know, with loans and tuition, I'm sure. I don't even know what it is, but it passed a number that I couldn't afford to even think about a long time ago. GU is very expensive unless you're on at least a partial, if not a full scholarship. We did, again, these two passed. They want to stay in the prosecutor's office. And there's another person who's going to interview here in about an hour that I hope to entice to be able to come into the office as well. But it ebbs and flows, and lately it's been ebbing more. And again, I can't speak for the public defender's office, but what my people are telling me, they have the same problems. And Victoria can, if she chooses, can address what she sees as far as availability of people, and they're also, not only are they tougher to get in the door, but the local version of the Attorney General's office can offer even senior attorneys $10, $20 or more $1,000 in the door, and they work from home. They don't have regular court appearances like we do and that sort of thing. So there's some people that have left for that as well. I am very proud to say, though, that over half of those that left for either the feds or the AG's office called me up a few weeks after they left and said, geez, any chance I can get back? Absolutely, we need you. So I brought like 4 or 5 of them back, and they're happily and gainfully re-employed by the county.
Okay.
Next slide. We talked about the trainer position. It's really critical. And it grew out of the necessity because of the turnover in part, but because we weren't getting consistency in training, because everybody trains differently. And if it's whoever's available, you don't know who that person in terms of how long have they been with the office. So this is an opportunity for us to restructure and get consistency in training. And again, consistency in training is going to be a better work product, more accurate, and more effective for the county. Next. That's just that has to happen in some way. I want to make sure that the board is represented to the absolute best of our abilities. And I know how busy, and I'm sure Mark has let you know to some extent or another, we're very, very busy. With 2 more county commissioners, we will definitely need to bring in somebody to even come close. Again, 5 instead of 3. Next. More questions? I know it's a little bit of money. We've done the best we can with what we have. I always do. Kate, let me tell you, I'm like a repeat broken record when it comes to frugal. But we're getting to the point now where certain things we're just not going to manage as well as we need to. And again, there's consequences if we don't. If if somebody works at McDonald's and they miss the pickles or something like that, then okay, they get a customer complaint here. We have other issues. So I appreciate the board's consideration for these requests. This doesn't have to be the end of the discussion. If you roll this around and decide that you'd like me or my staff to answer more questions, we'll be happy to do that. Work for you as well.
Are you confident you can fill all the positions? As I look at your overall staffing, about over 10% of your positions are vacant. Do you think you'll be able to fill the new ones?
So a few of those vacancies, I believe 4 or 5 of them, I have to look at the position list again, are actually family law positions. So those positions kind of ebb and flow based on what the state provides budget-wise and what caseloads that support enforcement team needs. So it's kind of separate and apart from the rest of our department because those vacancies we fill based really on the budget that we get from DSHS. We don't like to overextend ourselves in the staffing, and we try to stick to that budget because it's not 100% reimbursement that we receive from them. So those I would kind of pull out of the equation. And then we do have some staff turnover, so there are staffing vacancies. Oftentimes, what we find is it's unfortunately due a lot to the wages. We do advanced steps requests when we can, when we feel that people have appropriate experience and feel that we can get them, a higher starting step. I'm sure you're all, aware just as much as we are of union negotiations and what's happening. So typically, we don't have a huge issue filling vacancies. And so my hope is that when those negotiations conclude, whatever the outcome is vacancies will continue to be filled. As far as these specific positions, it's actually more like 4 lead attorney positions at this point because we're dictating off the current MOUs, and we actually only currently have 4 MOUs instead of 5. So we're only gonna take what we need. The 4 MOUs, replacing the 4 lead attorney positions is pretty budget neutral. Those we already have in our budget, and we would just post those, more transparent process, interview the applicants, and choose from there. The trainer position, we actually have already reorganized our current structure as well to try and accommodate this now. These budget requests were due in the beginning of August, and we're still running a department, and we still have issues that are ongoing and happening. And so kind of came to a head. We had some management turnover, and we really needed this position. So we made some current 2022 budget decisions to kind of rework our positions to try and get that trainer now. Obviously, if things change and the BOCC kind of understands our need and desire for this position, we could kind of restore what we've done to our budget and kind of adjust to accommodate what we gave up. But we do have a trainer position currently that we're trying to work in. And we have another administrative assistant staff person starting in 2 weeks to really help with the staffing and the turnover and supervision issues. We have one of the largest departments. We've got over 60 staff people and a management team of 2 currently that manage staff. That's a lot of staff people for 2 people. And so with, I'm chipping in, staff management isn't really even a part of my area, but I've been chipping in and help managing staff, and we've got another staff person coming on, and we just hired a brand new office manager. So our department is kind of in transition with staff management, but these additional positions, I don't think we'll have issues filling.
Well, and I kind of want to point out, because the slide makes it actually look like we're asking for a bit more. So commissioners, for your benefit, with some of the stuff that we did already have to do, the 5 lead attorneys, technically 4 of those are headcount budget neutral. So really it's 1 that's being asked for. And we're doing this because of the classification cleanups as we really start making sure the positions identify the work and the pay is corresponding. So that's headcount budget neutral on the 5 other than 1. So really we're looking at 1 there, the 1 DV unit supervisor, the 1 DV unit legal secretary, and then their 1 senior attorney add back. So to Caitlin's point, we did some shuffle with budget and headcount in their current existing environment, where we split 1 position essentially into 2. The wages actually came in less than the 1. So we've gotten very creative this year to get them the staffing support that they need without going over budget that they were approved for. And so if we're really looking at the asks for the prosecutor, you're actually only looking at 4 added position that would impact the budget in an increase from 2022 to 2023. So I can kind of start working some of that on my spreadsheets as well for you guys as we look at that in probably future weeks and talk about the whole organization. But it's not the ask isn't as large as it appears to be on the slide when you actually look at it from a wages perspective.
And Commissioner Kearns, to your question too, depending on the date of that document, I was introduced to 2 new staff, non-attorney staff that just started work yesterday. So we're actually having more applicants at the time for non-attorney staff than we are lawyers. But again, I expect that to pick up as those newly barred lawyers start looking around for their job opportunities.
With what's been discussed about turnover and people they come in and out, your projected actuals for 22 and then the preliminary budget for 23, it's about roughly 600,000 more. Do you think you just pull that off with the current proposed amount for your office?
I think we had, what was it, 481 was the total impact for 2023.
Yeah, but I'm just comparing your 22 actuals with our preliminary budget for 23. I mean, it's 600,000 more. So I mean, I guess this is Gary and Tessa, I mean, would we be thinking of adding an additional 400 and change, or 481 to the
Well, I think the reason
projected $600,000 increase?
the reason we projected 13.6 to 22 was because of the number of unfilled positions, that they had in open positions. So adding their supplemental request would be on top of the 14.2.
Okay. So do you think it's gonna be $1 million more to operate your budget in 23 than it was 22?
Well, to get to where we were, where we are now, we gave up some things just to pay for 2022 to get there. So I'm not sure that my understanding is.
And I don't know if you've been shared the preliminary numbers. I don't know if you've seen those. So
I think might be like kind of separate and apart too, like when Gary's talking about some of those figures that come in, they're predicting, when we have the vacant position, they predict them at top step 13. Typically, we don't hire all our vacant positions at top step 13. That's some of the costs. And when we're looking at doing these supplemental requests, we were just factoring that these don't exist within our current budget. So some of those funds might overlap. Some of those funds might not actually be used because the likelihood of us hiring in fact, a majority of the family law positions that get sucked into the budget don't ever even get filled. I've talked to Tessa about dropping them off of our vacant list, but we've kind of stuck with the leading with the flexibility of the state. And if it comes in, and they've talked about taking caseloads from Lincoln County and different things. And so that support enforcement team is kind of just an unknown in general on what it's gonna look like year to year. And so we'd like to just have the option to have those vacancies if in fact the state needs us to grow our department over there. But all of those get added in at top step as well.
I think that's a valid point though, Commissioner. I've been questioning that as well as we look at how we're budgeting for positions, what we're keeping open, how long we're keeping stuff open. So my head is where yours is, where I think we really need to start looking at what is real budget versus what do we hope and think we might be doing. Because I think there might be a variety of departments that reflect positions that we might have funding and we might not. And so that's something I'm really digging into right now with some of the reports I'm having built to figure out, is there a way in the system that we can flag maybe some of those where it doesn't hit the headcount line item for regular, maybe it's a secondary line item for grant-based or state-based or something where we can show the differentiation. So my head is exactly where yours is. I don't know if we'll get it done by 2023, but it is something for the future. If we're accurately projecting what we think our headcount's going to be, we need to find a way to start identifying what these positions truly are and what sort of funding we may or may not be getting for it.
And Commissioner, and again, I haven't seen that document. Is family law budget included on that then? Okay, well, no wonder. Okay, that's why, because they've been carrying open positions for a long time. Part of that was Debbie Curvis when she was over there, and John Grasso just took over the family law supervision. And we can certainly work with Human Resources and John Grasso, and if he doesn't need those positions, we'll cut him. The only difference is if they do some of this work that they're projecting, because it's been a lot of talk, and talk is cheap, but there's been a lot of talk about us being kind of like the regional family law and taking in cases from the other smaller counties that surround Spokane County. And so for that reason, we've been kind of carrying these positions open, but they're not costing anything. But if they're included in that document, that would go a long way to explain some of that money and that disparity that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because it's not money that we're sitting on or anything. It's just, it's out there in these open positions. And I know it has come up before. How long do we allow those positions to stay open? And if it's more prudent for the board, we'll certainly work with human resources and we'll make the appropriate adjustments.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not your department's fault, you're not the only department we see this in. I mean, we pass a budget at the beginning of the year thinking we're gonna spend so much money. I mean, it makes it, in many cases, it looks like we're short, that we're barely scraping by, and then at the end of the, a couple months into the following year when we get the actuals back and it's like we had, $10 million unspent, and it's just like, well, roll the clock back 12 months and we thought we were barely gonna make it by, but we've got this huge ending fund balance, so.
Well, though I'm happy to hear we're not the only department that you see it in, if it's something that we need to fix, I'm all for fixing it.
Well, and I think part of it goes, it's optimism of all the departments that think, yeah, we're gonna be fully staffed all year long, and that just doesn't happen, so.
Never.
Specifically to address your point, Commissioner, Scott and I and Tessa have met. We've identified vacancy adjustments for a lot of the major departments. And for the prosecutor, we're looking at about $330,000 in those vacancy adjustments. For the sheriff, $3.7 million in vacancy adjustments. Detention, $2.4 million. So we are looking at that in terms of that.
Yeah. No, and I'm thrilled we're doing that, but a couple years ago, we didn't do that. That wasn't something we even considered a couple years ago, so.
Well, a lot of them would try to use that then as kind of their slush fund too
Correct.
for their departments.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason that may go on, quite honestly, is, they're afraid that getting it back is a lot harder than just hanging on to it for a while. That kind of a syndrome, I don't know. But I'm happy to do whatever the board wants us to do vis-a-vis that issue and work with human resources to get that done.
Well, and I did have a conversation with Scott here last week before last, about, and this is a good example. When we start to budget, we assume that the vacant positions and the new positions are gonna get hired on January 1, and that's not gonna happen. There's gonna be interview time and everything like that, and so if we could schedule out what is a reasonable, hiring process and build that into the budget, that would be, at least keep us more accurate, not end up building these slush funds.
And calculating in, there's other people that are at the other end of the spectrum that are gonna retire.
Yep.
And then, so.
Okay, so we are,
Can I make just some parting observations, and this is gonna be something I share with all the departments too. So every department rolled up in total has about 9.3 million in supplemental requests to add to the 2023 budget. As it stands right now, the general fund has a projected budget deficit of 3.2 million. So you can do the math on there.
Is that before the 9?
That's before the 9. We have nothing's been built into the 9.
So the gap really
The
is
gap
12.
could be 12 if any,
12.
to the extent that any of these are considered. So understand the needs for that you've highlighted, Larry, and I'm not doubting the needs. Commissioner Kern's already highlighted this. Take a look at your projected expenses for 2022. Gina's handing out some of those right now. Is there an opportunity to do some reallocation? Talked about some headcount that may not be needed that are clogging the budget right now. And if those could be cleared out, you may have the ability to absorb some of these things. So the challenge first is to look at your budget, see if there's an opportunity to absorb some of these requests within your current budget by removing some headcount, reallocating some of your expenses. And the other thing I would say is, if there are some one-time technology investments that you think could be helpful and certain to reduce future M&O expenses and personnel expenses, highlight those to us as well. It's easier for the board to consider one-time capital investments that don't have a recurring and cumulative impact on future budgets. And it's just smart business, smart stewardship for our community as well. So
May I ask a question? Is that just technology related? Like any capital
If you
investments
have
that
some
might
other,
be,
if you have some other
cost
things that
savings?
you think that could be, absolutely, bring them up. So not just limited to that.
fire budgets.
Caitlin just wants to go. Okay, so we are 20 minutes over, so
Off to a good start.
I know, so we may wanna look at, I was just looking at this, maybe I could have one minute, if we needed to bump one, we could.
Yep.
Just
We're
to
gonna have to.
keep with all of today's schedules, so so just as we get closer, we may wanna look at that one.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate all the information, and so we are gonna move on to council amendments, Victoria.
Thanks again.
Thank you for your time.
Well, good morning, everybody. Maybe I can help you catch up some of your time. I will just note by saying, the documents that were just handed out, it showed that Council for Defense has a vacant position that was actually filled and the person started yesterday, so right now we are fully staffed. My supplemental request for this year is an additional legal secretary and then a printer, scanner, copier, and the associated maintenance costs with that. In 2019, Council for Defense grew by an attorney, but the staff did not grow. The additional demands and caseload that we have with that, those cases coming in would be benefit from having the additional staff person available. Because we're such a small office, it makes it very difficult when we have staff that are absent. So if we already have someone who's on a pre-planned vacation and someone's sick, we're left with 2 remaining staff people to run the whole office. Having another person will help with office morale in that regard for unexpected absences. We've been benefited by having an extra help position since the fall of 2021 through the Blake grant. So we've experienced having this extra person, and that grant money is going to expire at the end of the year. And so we had the benefits of having that person there and believe that that would continue to help support the attorneys within the office. One of the reasons we're asking for the new person as well as printer is because we are moving to a digital storage of our older files. Right now we contract with Access, and it costs money to retrieve our files, to get them, and then it costs us money to send them back and have them put back on a shelf. With recent changes in the legislature, with resentencings that are going on, we need access to these older files on a more common basis than before. And by having everything digitally stored, it's available to us right on our laptops wherever we are. So one of the projects that this position, if it's funded, would be assigned is working on backscanning those older files so that we can move forward with this digital era. We have to start back in 1997, backscanning files to get caught up to date. So we had received a quote from H&H Document Management Solutions. They work with the county and state, so there's some reduced costs there. And that was the supplemental M&O request. That's the reason I'm asking for another secretary.
Their supplemental request is $74,000. Their total budget in the general fund is $1.577 million. Just to give you perspective.
That's all I have, unless you guys have any questions.
Well, that's pretty easy, you did like make up time for us, so any questions for Victoria?
So the position is to fill the one that was currently being funded through Blake. Is that what we're
It
talking
would be
about?
allow us to continue that position, yes.
Okay, I got you.
And you're moving it from an extra help to a full-time benefited?
Yes.
And with once you're caught up with scanning, and I only ask this because we're doing it in my office right now too. Do you feel that even when all of your documents are image scanned and committed, you'll still have a full-time need for that type of work? Or would you prefer to keep it extra help?
I believe we do have the need for the full-time work. The complexity of cases that the attorneys are dealing with is only increasing, and I think Mr. Haskell touched on that too. Just watching the news, there's a lot of violent crime happening in Spokane, which creates a lot more discovery, and having a full-time secretary, they are also going to be assisting the attorneys in getting through discovery and just being more supported within the office. It would be kind of the side project to fill the time. the scanning and stuff, it would not be the full-time position, but that would be another project that we would be able to get a lot more time devoted to, because right now we can maybe get an hour a day.
Questions for Victoria?
Quick one. Victoria, is the office supply, that's for a copier, you said? That's to replace a copier?
We have one currently, but we just have one, so anytime it's being serviced, we don't have the ability to scan, or we have one older copier that costs a lot more in ink and paper, so I try not to have anyone use it.
Yeah.
This would create one having kind of a central location instead of in with our secretary and receptionist to help traffic flow there for her as well, so that way she can vote, not being interrupted so many times, because a lot of times when there's a communal printer, people go to use it and they think they need to have a conversation with who's ever sitting there. And so if we could position one somewhere else, it will allow her to have less distractions and interruptions as well, and be more central location within the office for everyone to access.
So that's the purchase price, it's a one-time expense.
It is, and then
Okay.
there's a monthly or quarterly cost for service.
That's the $350 underneath.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
And with your scan project, the other thing, that cost does look a little bit low, so I don't know if you guys looked with purchasing on that at all, but again, we're doing that too. So the high efficiency scanners that you guys might need actually might look a little bit higher than that. We came in closer to that 15 mark, looking at the high efficiency scanners.
And I'm leaning over to my executive assistant, because I know she did the contract or got the bid, and so, was it a high capacity, or do you even know? It is. It was supposed to be high capacity for
I
us.
double check it.
Okay, yeah. Thank
Just a
you.
forewarning.
Yeah.
I'll bore you with my parting words, because you already heard them.
Okay. I'll probably stick around though, so. Thank you.
But just hearing that makes me think, that's where we need to really be working with purchasing to see what can we do that, is ensuring that we're getting the best deal and it's equipment that is being used in other departments that everybody really likes, instead of having each department kind of go through and do all of this. So we really need to have that, have purchasing be part of those discussions, so we ensure that we're getting the best quality for the best price. And if one department's already been through it and has seen a good product versus not a good product, those are important things. And so I don't know if you're working with purchasing or if purchasing is providing that information to people. So just something for us to really think about and try to do.
That's a great idea ourselves.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank
Well,
you.
great. We're back on time, so.
I swear.
I know. Efficient. I like it. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing this morning?
Good.
Good.
How's everybody else doing?
Charbonneau. So we're a few minutes ahead. So
Alright.
we'll let you just go ahead and start.
Does everybody have a copy of the supplementals? Not I brought extras.
Will we have that one?
No.
But not with you.
Thanks.
And then I'd like to challenge on where everything is from here, so.
I'll find it for you.
I know I said it was in alphabetical order.
No, it's
kind
numerical.
in
It's
alphabetical
numerical.
Some kind of crazy.
Slightly alphabetical.
Public defense starts with a department ID of 305.
So we're gonna just need to make sure we all get to the right page before we start. It shouldn't be this challenging, but it certainly is.
So I've passed multiple page ones. So
Every agency was reprinted with page one, so some of them didn't end up on the backs of others.
Okay.
Very tricky to print all that.
Okay.
305, keep going to 305.
And just by point of reference for big numbers, so you have this in your mind, Public Defense General Fund budget, the base budget they submitted was $9,464,000. And they're looking for a supplemental total request of about $200,000.
Yeah, and on that supplemental request form, I think if we totaled it, because we've got the FTE amount and then the M and O request, having a total amount there would be helpful. Okay,
Are you ready?
I think we all have the right pages.
All right.
No?
I'm fine.
You're ready to go. You got the supplemental.
I got the supplemental, I'm gonna go off to that.
Very good.
So unless you'd like me to start with some out, I was gonna start with supplemental.
Yep.
First one I have is our request for an additional attorney position. It would be a full-time position, that is for civil commitments, also referred to as ITA. We've asked or made this request, from my understanding, multiple times over the last few years. We're again making that request, mostly because we're getting information from our attorneys that they are over what they would be considered their caseload standard. It's a little bit confusing, as you guys are all aware from a conversation I've had with you, the standards of indigent defense and the requirements there. There are also some guidelines that come into play, but as far as the requirements, civil commitment attorneys are required to take, well, no more than 250 cases a year. The vague part, or the gray area, lies within the definition of a case, especially for that particular docket. It's not as standard or as easy to define, in my opinion, as a criminal case. You open the file and information's filed, and bam, you assign an attorney and they've got that case, and that equals one case. Well, for civil commitments, it's a little different than that. So the numbers I pulled, and it's in the supplemental request, it looks like in 2021, there's approximately 2,500 new cases. And if you did the math and divided by the 5 civil commitment attorneys we have, you're gonna get a ratio, or get a case count about 450 per attorney. Obviously, that's over the 250. We don't like that, but again, they're not necessarily an entire case. The way, and I've never done civil commitment work, but my understanding is there's 12 facilities here in the county. They sort of divide their time based on the facilities rather than the individual clients. So you have multiple attorneys working with different clients at different times. So it's difficult to figure out exactly if one case is in fact one case. And our argument would be, no, it's not. But that being said, there's still a need for another attorney as the case counts are getting higher. And this is progressively true. You can see it was about 2,500 in 2021. The numbers projected for 2022 are just as high. And it seems to be heading even higher than that. So that's the basis for that request. So at some point, we're gonna get into a problem with standards and attorneys not willing to sign certifications. And then we've got an issue, because now we have no one doing those cases. If they can't sign the certifications, then they can't take the case. And this is gonna lead into the next one as well, but does anybody have any questions about that position?
That one, Tessa, Gary, we think could be funded through mental health sales tax, correct?
That would be our preferred funding source.
Yep, so wouldn't have an impact on the general fund.
Correct.
I'll ask you a similar question that I asked Prosecutor Haskell. Your projected actuals for this year are roughly $8.6 million. And in our preliminary budget, again, I don't know if you have been provided this number yet, but our preliminary number is yet 9.46. So over $800,000 more in 23 than you spent in 22. When I look at your vacancies, you have one vacancy. Is that still accurate? What, one vacant position in your office?
It's moving. We have lost a
Yeah.
few recently, so it's
We
constantly,
know
shifting.
that flows, but
Yeah.
so do you think you would need more than the preliminary budget that would be $800,000 more than you operated to run this year?
Yeah, and this is the first I'm seeing this number, but that sounds right. And the answer is yes. And part of the reason is just as you explained, this last year we've been understaffed, right?
Yeah.
So what we budgeted for 2022, we're not utilizing fully because we can't get to full staff. That doesn't mean we don't have a need for that full staff. And that's my biggest concern. The reason I'm asking for this position is that at some point we're gonna get to a position where the attorneys are like, it's too many, I can't sign the certification. I'm not gonna sign the certification, therefore I'm not taking cases. And now we've got a position where, well, we can terminate, but then we've gotta find somebody new. But those cases don't go away, somebody's still gotta take them. So the short answer is yes, and I believe even historically, we've come under budget quite a few times, and I think again, the biggest reason is because we can't get to full staff. Doesn't mean we should be.
Yeah, you're roughly $400,000 under budget for this year. And then we'd be, again, preliminary for 23 would be $400,000 above what you were budgeted for 22, but 800,000 above what you actually spent in 22, so.
Right, that's my understanding, yes.
So.
Yeah, so I still would say, yes, we still need that, we need to be budgeted for it, because if we can get to full capacity, we should. And the need is still there.
Do you think with your ask, your ask, do you think you can make it work with the preliminary number?
It just depends, there's a lot of variables there. The biggest one is filings, and we don't know the answer to that. Now again, ITA is kind of a different issue, and I can't predict that as well. But we're seeing criminal filings, Victoria probably spoke to this, they're rising. They're going back to pre-COVID numbers. And if that continues, again, we're gonna be in a position where, well, we don't have the staff, they can't find the certs, if they can't sign the certs, they can't represent indigent defendants, and now we're in real trouble. I hope that answers your question, Justin. Yeah.
And if you're short-staffed, who then takes that over? Do you have to send that out? Does it go to counsel for defense? You know, do you have to get outside attorneys then to cover that?
In general, or do you mean specifically with the civil commitment?
Just
folks?
in general.
In general, right. So if we don't have the staff, they can only take, so let's take felonies, for example. Adult felonies, we can take 150 cases per calendar year. That meaning cases assigned, right? So if we get to 151, that's the first stop's gonna go counsel for defense, and maybe they're at their number. If they're at their number, then now we're back to, all right, who's on the conflict list? That's private counsel. And then it's back to what we talked about before, right? So now we're into paying for that. Also, I think it is worth note, we did reduce that number for the amount we expect for conflict. I mean, regardless of the board's decision on the conflict office that we've discussed, we've reduced that by 50,000. Originally, it was budgeted, I think, for 2022 of 300, and that includes not only private conflicts but also some expert expenditure. As everyone's in this room is probably aware, Sharp is now done, so we expect a little bit less there. So we have made some adjustments to the budget as we see fit.
Where are we on the discussion about the second conflict office?
We're still researching it.
Okay.
Commissioner, yeah.
Any other questions on the civil commitment position? All right. If there's anything else, I'll move to the second request that we have, and the last one we have, which is for a full-time investigator. So, basically, the Washington Defender Associations come out with guidelines as what they think the appropriate ratio for attorney to investigator should be. That ratio is 1 to 4. That ratio was also adopted by county resolution, I believe, multiple times, the last time in 2013. The way I read it is more of a guideline or a strong suggestion than an actual court rule. It's not court rule, which is how we're getting away so far, but the numbers are rising, and we're getting into a tricky spot. We've been able to mitigate some of that issue with the hiring of Ms. Carpenter, who's a part-time investigator in our office, and despite working part-time, she's managed to basically work a full caseload, taking all of our misdemeanor investigative assignments, which has helped considerably because now we're reducing that ratio closer to 1 to 4.5-ish on the felony side of things, which is, again, obviously closer to the 1 to 4, which is what we want. But again, the numbers are rising, and we lose her at the end of December, which means now we've got to staff that misdemeanor investigative position to some extent. And so we really need one more full-time investigator to do that or to keep the numbers back to that ratio. And again, the same thing applies as it did in civil commitments. the numbers keep growing up, which they are, it gets to a point where it's too high, attorneys say, I'm not filing the certifications, I can't be in compliance with standards for indigent defense, and if I'm not in compliance with standards, then I can't take a case, and now we're in a position, well, who is? So that's the issue, and that's why we're making the request. I don't know if I don't have much else to add other than that, unless there's some questions.
Going back, Colin, to the ITA attorney, can you go back 5 years? And how long have we been doing it? We've been doing it at least 5 years?
The ITAs? Oh, longer than that, yeah.
Okay, can you go back 5 years and get the hourly or the yearly projections? And then maybe we could do some forecasting going into the future about what that growth looks like?
As far as cases assigned? Okay, yeah.
Because that would give us some predictability moving forward that we don't have right now, so.
Well, and I guess one of my comments would be in data, just having us look at some of the data, just because the criminal justice system is such a big part of our general fund budget, is seeing what is the data on arrests, what's the data on, what's, getting the charges that are happening, what's going to public defenders, just all those things that, we should be at this point as we've been trying to track data, getting that information so we can look at it holistically, instead of just, individually as each department. So that way,
Kind of a forecasting model, if we could put it together, Colin, I'll work with you on that. And I would be saying with all the other cases too, so that we probably would.
Well, maybe worth doing for the investigator spot too, I can give you that as well.
Right.
See the number of
So,
cases.
and I think it's important that we show that, and so we, even working on our 5-year projections with Gary, we're gonna wanna have that information up front.
The only caveat I'll give to you, Mike, and everybody else is that the pandemic and plague. So plague is the decision that, changed our laws as far as possession of a controlled substance are concerned. So those numbers are really, well, in my opinion, they should almost be thrown out of the forecast, because now we're going back to where we were before all that. So I'll include them, but.
Let's include them in caveat, asterisk, this is that period. I'll probably do the same with your office. This is to benefit you. This is to give you some forecastability moving forward so that the board has something to work with,
So say, to me, it's like with the Blake decision, we should be seeing less arrests, less,
Well, I mean,
well, I know, but so that's what I'm saying, it's like, that's what I would be thinking, and so that's why, seeing what the numbers really are and what really is happening, because if you can't, arrest for possession.
but usually, I don't think many people were picked up on just a drug charge. It was a drug and something else.
Something else.
I mean, the drug charge may have been the most serious, being a felony, but there was always, Mike, how many times, because I always had you run that number for me. How many, because, we always hear our friends across the river, like to say, our jail was full of people that were in jail on only a drug charge. And I had Mike run that number for, and it, like, the biggest number I ever saw out of the whole, even when we were at like max capacity of both, it'd be like 20 was the biggest number of people that were in on only a drug charge. It's a drug charge paired with something else, maybe it was an assault, maybe it was a robbery, it was,
unless it's a felony level drug charge, it gets up there, distributing, growing operation.
Right, possession with intent or delivery.
Different,
But
So we're not seeing the secondary charge, we're just seeing the main charge. I guess that's my question, is what effect are we really seeing from the Blake decision?
Well, again, I can put that together for you as well. What we noticed, and I don't know if Victoria has different information than I do, but we've noticed a substantial drop as soon as Blake came down in the number of criminal filings that, Mr. Haskell has filed, right? So, and it was substantial for, well, it still is a little bit substantial. But the numbers are going back. So, for whatever reason, I don't have the answer for you on that. Okay. But I'll do the projection and give that to you.
Yeah, I guess that'd be interesting to see, what that effect,
I agree, yeah.
But I think, yes, Mike, for us, having some kind of overall perspective as to how, again, as we know, more deputies means more arrests, which means more issues on the legal side, which means more
Yeah.
trials, you know, so it's like, you know, what is that really looking like and what does that affect, so we can actually make
It kind of helps with the
More informed.
workload distribution. You see what I'm saying? So we can get a clear understanding. There's only certain attorneys that can handle certain cases, correct?
Correct.
And so that gives us that model that we're looking for. And I'm sorry, I just brought this out. I could have talked to you,
No, that's fine.
on the telephone, but I think it will help just in listening to these conversations. That will really help benefit this conversation, those forecasting models. So I'll work with you guys on that.
Anything else?
Just some parting words. Colin, I'm sharing this with all the departments who are coming in and presenting. Right now, the total of all the supplemental requests by every department is over 9.3 million. Those are not in the budget today. What you'll see on the document that you have is right now the general fund preliminary roll-up shows a $3.2 million deficit that we still have to figure out how we're gonna solve on that. So Commissioner Kearns highlighted looking at your projected expenses for 22. Take a look at your expense detail. Understand that the personnel is a little bit challenging because you'd like to be fully staffed to manage your caseloads. But as I kind of look through it, there's a number of areas that have budget lines, but there's no actuals for them for the last couple of years. There might be an opportunity for you to look at absorbing this additional requested position without actually having to increase your expenses. And then finally, if there's some one-time technology or capital investments that don't have a recurring, that could reduce recurring expenses through personnel or other things, please highlight those for the board to consider as well.
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate you
Colin.
coming in. Okay, next, we've got risk management. Come on over. And we need to figure out where that is in our book.
Page one.
Page one.
Hey, wait a minute, there's all on page one.
We know the number?
Should be a 289, but it'll be towards the end, because risk management is really 507 for his other funds.
Yeah, 505, 507 are the non-general fund funds, and then and two accounts in the general fund for the security budget.
So your base budget, Steve, is 1,116,000
For his general fund
for your
department.
general fund department only.
Right.
And your supplemental request is approximately 135,000.
Yeah, but I mean, even
Then I had 182.
182.
182, 370.
Oh, you're right. For M and O.
Right.
And then 53 for FTE.
Yeah, the FTE one, but this
Two eight
was
two.
split
Two eight
between
289.
505 and 507.
So it should be back towards, like jail's the last one, it should be right before jail. Did it not get in there?
Outside agencies is right before detention services, then animal control is before that.
Okay, then maybe, we'll get that printed for you guys.
Look at the summary page. I'll probably just go to the summary page at the end. We're not finding it in the back.
I got this summary page. I know where that's at.
Just go to that.
Yeah.
I know.
We're just gonna stick there.
Probably a good thing.
Give us just 1 second as we try to
Sure,
figure this out.
Today.
This goes till noon.
But we're ahead of schedule.
I got it 11:45 downtown, so I'll just get that over early and I'll catch
Ms. who?
district court.
Oh,
That's,
okay.
this is the order.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
We're
I'll just
10
catch
minutes
up.
ahead, we're 10 minutes ahead of schedule.
I'll just catch up.
Okay, I think we're ready.
Great. Well, good morning, Commissioners, senior leaders. What order would you like me to present these? I have one FTE request, one capital funding request, and then the general fund security budget request.
Well, I think what we have in our list is, the supplemental request on the summary page. Gary, could you show him that?
Yeah,
So we've
that-
got- That's probably easiest.
So this is your supplemental request for FTE here,
Right.
and then your M and O request for these items for the 182.
Okay, so, and I sent you an email, so the capital expenditure isn't.
No.
Okay.
Well, you're welcome to talk about it, we just don't have any information.
Yeah, that one's pretty simple. So it's replacing one of our vehicles. We have a 2005 Blazer with 110,000 miles on it, and it's starting to show a lot of wear and tear and repair bills and so on and so forth. So I looked at the state contract to replace that vehicle. It's about $24,000. And that is split between Fund 505 Workers' Comp and 507, which is liability. So it's a 50-50 split on those two funds.
Not general fund.
Not general fund.
And what were the two fund numbers?
Pardon?
What were the two fund numbers you said?
505, that's workers' comp, and then 507 is liability.
And those are enterprise ones, right?
Correct. Correct. Well, thank you. Next one, the additional FTE. That's actually split between not only the, little bit on the general fund side, but also 505 and 507, because the position would function for basic risk management tasking for regardless of the fund. So as we're moving into the digital paperless world, obviously we have claims in workers' comp, we have claims in liability and property, and we have training, obviously, that we're more and more going to Precipio, going to online, going to data type driven programs instead of old paper files and so on and so forth. So we really need a position that kind of a computer application specialist that can help us with a lot of that conversion. I kind of went through and went through all the positions to find out what kind of time they're spending on scanning documents, putting in folders, doing the data analysis, pulling reports, and so on and so forth. And it certainly qualifies for a full-time position that could be controlled or dedicated to doing that type of thing, and allowing my workers' comp claim staff or liability claim staff or loss control staff, security staff to actually be out in the field doing what we really want them to do, their primary functions. The other things that it would help in is, we have this big Galaxy electronic security system, and we're limited on the days that we can provide ID card services just because it's collateral duties with Brandy, my admin assistant, or one of my workers' comp adjusters, because when Brandy's not there, that position would take over for ID card production and management of that electronic system, pulling reports, doing public records requests of that kind of sort, and we could offer ID card production pretty much 5 days a week. Another system recently that we've switched over to, we got rid of the old SIN system, and now we have this Code Red system. It's a little bit archaic, and Ashley and I and IT are working on solutions to try and get data uploads to that Code Red for the emergency notification system. But right now it's taking resources from current staff to update and review all of the phone numbers, all the employee data in the system, as well as sending out the the notification. So that's the idea behind that additional FTE. Kind of similar to the Linda Fields position over in HR, but obviously without the vast experience that Linda has. I can also pull reports of trend analysis and so on and so forth from our various systems that will be instrumental in moving forward to target really where our risk management program needs to focus.
So Steve, the number there, 53,809 for the supplemental FTE request, does that represent like 50%? You said it was going to be shared in terms of some of the other funds or grant funding. So what does the 53,800 represent?
I think that's the total expense of the position with salary and benefits. I don't know, Ashley, maybe you can help me with that?
And this is budgeted at a 1553 rate as well. It would be quite a bit higher than that. I'll have to pull numbers, but realistically, base wage should be significantly higher than that for a computer application specialist. At least 20 probably, but I'll have to go look
But that would be workers' comp and liability
as well,
covering those?
parts of it. So it's kind of a third, so to speak.
The third is the security?
So general fund picks up a portion of it, and then the other two funds pick up the workers' comp and.
I would say it's probably 75% to 80% would be 505 and 507.
Yep.
And then probably 20 to 25% would be from the general fund, the
And
security portion.
to Steve's point, I actually asked him to dig in and look at his current staff and ask and really find out, do a desk audit, how much time a week are they spending just doing data management, system management, and well over a full-time position folded out of that. So by putting someone in this role who is computer savvy, that is their work, trying to work to create more efficiencies, start getting the systems to talk to each other, so we're doing less data management by hand. We need someone who can manage that process. Long term, is this a position that maybe always needs to sit in risk? I don't know, honestly. It could be one that we look at folding into IT in the future or into other business type analysts as we really start working on the ERP and systems. But right now, with the amount of time that his team spends in the office on computer work rather than in the field doing safety assessments, working on liability, it's substantial. So that's where the ask came from, is really looking at even our campus security, right? Our campus security officer should not be in his office 50% of the time maintaining a website. And that's what's happening right now. And so as we look at how do we provide better partnership with the field staff, this is the only way that we can lift that burden of the administration right now, get risk put together in a way that's more efficient, and then deploy resources hopefully in other areas if we get risk set up efficiently.
What was that position you said that spends 50% of the time in their
Our
office?
security campus,
Security.
yeah.
Yeah, you know, initially our security coordinator was hired for that purpose, really doing security and vulnerability assessments, looking at systems, looking at our platform, identifying improvements moving forward. That was prior to the sheriff's department pretty much transferring all of the responsibility for security at Spokane County onto risk management, and it's a one-person show. So we got a new electronic access system. Initially, it was the idea or philosophy was that several departments would be involved with the data management for their department and assigning profiles and doing annual audits and so on and so forth to help manage that system. But it was quickly determined that the more hands that are in the system, the more screwed up things would get as far as wrong access, doors being left open, just too much control. And then we had CJIS issues come in with the audit that required more lockdown of those CJIS areas. So the amount of time that position now has to focus on being in the Galaxy system to electronically program and make sure that everything is up to date and when there's issues, correct those issues and so on and so forth. It takes probably 50 to 60% of his time, which is not ideal at all, and it takes away from really having that position out in the field, looking at security issues and coming up with solutions for a better
Can you speak to the other professional services, which is your largest ask?
Oh, sure, on the general fund, that's the security portion of it. So most of the M and O increases are just cost increases, whether it's ID cards on the office supplies and the rising cost of those when we have to purchase them, the cost of fuel, some training because we know there's going to be changes to the Code Red, changes to the Galaxy, different people coming in, and that requires us to bring in Cam Tech and Ray to do that training and get the materials so that they can do that. The other professional services, the two big asks there, if you notice, there's two numbers behind that line item. If you recall, in the general fund, there are two accounts for the security budget. One is for court security.
We have one number, $172,020.
Okay.
I don't.
They didn't get your supplemental, Steve.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's actually divided up. So in the court security budget, which is an account 2890089, it's split up for county and court security. The ask there of that larger number is 126,000. What that is a 6% increase in the cost of the security contract for 2023 moving forward. That's what I anticipate will be the cost increase. And quite honestly, the bid for contracted services closed on the 7th. I already have received the 4 qualified representatives that submitted a bid, and it looks like that cost increase per hour for guard services is looking at about a 5.5% to 6% raise. So that's what we might have to deal with. So that represents 126,000 of it. For the other portion, which is an account for county security, which is 2890999, that's $46,020. What that represents is adding gate guards to our east and our west gates, and as well as that roving patrol from 5 o'clock till 7 o'clock at night after hours that not only provides a check of all the exterior doors throughout the campus, but also a security escort service for our employees who work after hours to get to their vehicles and so on and so forth. We're all aware of the increased crime in this general area. We're well aware of the homeless situation, and that quite honestly, the homeless situation and those folks, even though it looks like we may be able to get some relief from what the city's doing in the county with getting housing and being able to trespass folks off, but they're still there to start with. So until they're trespassed off or until law enforcement can get there, and sometimes they're too busy to show up for a homeless person call on campus, we have that security team that's available, showing a presence and also being able to escort our employees. One other thing about those two gates, I've had a lot of conversations with our facilities director, Gil, about the gates, and quite honestly, they're having a very tough time with the wear and tear of those gates going up and down all day long, every day. So with the gate guards in place during normal working hours for the county, 8:30 to 5, if we have a gate guard at each one of those locations, the gate can actually stay up, which also doesn't expose it to the constant wear and tear and the damage. Just to share a few numbers, from 2019 to current, we've had 4 claims on gate damage to those gates. Okay, that's not normal wear and tear stuff. That's just folks running into them, either tailgating in or out or whatever it takes. The total cost of claims associated with repair, just repair of those gates, is right around it's $54,734 we've spent on fixing those gates for incidents that occurred during normal working hours. Now, yes, that comes out of a different fund, but it comes around back through cost allocations, and cost is cost. So again, $55,000 just to fix the gates. That does not include the cost of hiring PPC to supply a gate guard the entire time that those gates are out of commission. because when they're out of commission, they have to be in the raised position, and we leave exposed our campus not only during the day, but all weekend long. So it's 24/7 gate guard sitting there out of the claim, which quite honestly is a ridiculous cost, but it's a very important cost, because otherwise we just leave the campus open to vulnerability from anybody and everybody driving in through a weekend and having their way, per se. The last item on that.
Who's running into it, and are we going after their insurance
Yes,
to?
we are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we recover a lot of that cost then?
We cover most of it, right, but again,
Okay.
their insurance pays for a depreciated cost instead of a replacement cost. So at the end of the day.
We're not replacing the gate.
And
though,
quite
are we?
honestly, they don't pay for our security services that we put in place, our security guard, because that's our decision to keep our platform secure. They'll pay for the repair of the gate, and most of the time it's personal insurance. From auto liability, we've had several SPD people that actually ran into the gates.
Okay. So you mentioned 24/7 coverage of, so somebody is in that booth 24/7 when the gate is inoperable?
Yes, absolutely.
There's many more places on this campus where you could get a car on campus if you wanted to, or just walk on campus. Why?
Well, you're right, but
I mean,
again, a vehicle driving in, it can gain access very quick, can carry anything they want to carry for damage or vandalism or those type of things. I mean, somebody that's walking on the campus can certainly do a bunch of damage. They can pull out a spray can or anything else. But vehicles are a much bigger threat when it comes to security platform on our campus. Is this campus absolutely secure? No. You know, people can drive around bollards, they can drive through the front lawn, they can pretty much have access. But if they have wide open gates that they can just drive through, it makes it, it's almost an invitation for them to come into the campus and drive around.
Okay.
And again, we've done a whole lot of things back and forth with trying this and trying that. But as our security platform is pretty much being maintained at the same, but our exposure to security related events keeps rising in this area especially.
Now you ran, what, did we do a pilot program a couple years ago about the after hours escorts to car, and the number was very low, wasn't it?
At the time we did the pilot, it was at the very beginning of when we had the kind of the homeless situation, and it was really one or two people.
Yeah.
It's not nearly as extreme as it has been in the last 6 or 8 months. But we did, during that pilot program, just that roving patrol that was able to check the outer doors, making sure they were locked and so on. I mean, there was 4 doors that they found that were not secure. They were not latched. That's 4 times that, we were left vulnerable, and 2 of those were on a Friday afternoon.
Is that a malfunction in the door mechanism?
It can be several things. Most of the time, it's people have an expectation when they go through a door and it has a closing mechanism that it's going to shut and latch. If there's a little bit of breeze that's going around in the area, then the door doesn't latch all the way, and people don't do what they should do, and that's make sure the door is latched once they exit the building. We keep sending reminders. We keep sharing that with department heads to make sure that people understand that, not every door is going to shut and latch just automatically, and don't assume it will. Make sure it's shut behind you. But folks don't do it. Not all folks, some do.
I think the other thing to point out about the timing of that was, we were still pretty deep in COVID as well when we ran that pilot program, so I have no idea if we would see different responses and utilization of the plan now. But
we've gone down. This is from like the greatest hits.
Oh,
We've done this many times.
I was thinking of the one that we did like right when I started, because when I started, it didn't.
We've done this several times.
Okay, sorry, I was just thinking of the most recent one then.
Okay.
And the last item on there is line item 4810, which is equipment repair and maintenance for $8,000. That's actually, it's been a shortfall for several years. That's the Camtech maintenance agreement for maintaining and doing the maintenance and on our Galaxy security access system.
I have a question. So Steve, SPD obviously parks a lot of and has a lot of personnel that are on the campus. Are they gonna come to the table with some of this? Is that those conversations happen, or is it gonna be solely on the county? Yes, I see Jessica said.
We charge them, we assess a small nominal fee for some of the security things through liability insurance, kind of in a very, very roundabout way. But it is not much money. But they are assessed some for accessing campus and having security badges and things like that.
Yeah, we never fully get the money back for the claims, as we know, the sheriff's department contracts with the valley. And quite honestly, the valley has as many, if not more, liability claims for law enforcement activity as our unincorporated area. And we don't recoup our deductible costs for those nasty use of force claims. So it's one of those things. There's a little factor in there for property insurance and so on and so forth with the cost, but doesn't pan out where
Doesn't
we
materialize.
No.
Yeah. It's unfortunate.
Okay, any other questions for Steve? Did you hear?
Yeah, Steve, a couple of things. You heard what I said to call already, right? So I encourage you to look at your budget today, because we looked through what Gina handed out there. There probably is a couple places you can do some reallocation of dollars to pick up some of these smaller dollar items. The other professional services, I understand that's likely the results of the bid that we're going to get for the courthouse, and then some decision points for budget considerations as to absorbing the roving patrols, gate guards, that sort of thing. While we don't recover costs today from certain of our other partners who use the campus, I would encourage us that we need to look at that very closely to see how we can recoup some of those costs. I don't know if that's with the valley, probably part of a contract discussion with the city. I don't know when that comes up as well, but I think there needs to be some critical evaluation to make sure that we're not absorbing costs that should be recovered through other individual municipalities that are utilizing the campus as well. So, and I think you've got some other technology things, Steve, that you're looking at for improving security on campus. That'll come up through our capital request, but including panic buttons, having a consistent way of having access to the buildings that keeps in mind the thoughtful security for our employees as well. And I believe there might be some ARP opportunities that the commissioners could look to address some of those needs as far as increasing our robustness of our security system here on campus.
Yep. With our emergency plan, doing the security and safety assessments of every work area, not just every building, but every work area. We're collecting all the data, whether they have intrusion alarms, whether they have panic buttons, whether they have sufficient lighting, whether they have intercom systems, whether they have CCTV, all of those type of things. And all that data would be collected and put together to show and paint a picture of exactly what our security platform is currently and where we think we should go in the future with some big ask for future spending there. I will say so my role with security in the general fund is a little different because I don't really have any control whatsoever. I'm given every year targeted budget for those two accounts within the general fund, and they're very bare bones, very bare bones. Again, it's the bare minimum. I think there's 5 line items in the county security account number, and there's more in the court, but that also includes a court security deputy. Okay, and I have no control over his what their payroll is and their benefits and paying for their vehicle and their gas and phone and all those type of things. So the only things I can do is recognize where our contract costs are gonna go up and try to bring that to the attention that it's kind of as far as the 126,000, it's kind of a no choice type of thing. It is what it is, unfortunately.
So,
I haven't found a contractor yet that goes backwards in their price.
so Steve, under the courthouse security, we absorb the cost of the sheriff's deputies. Is that what you're saying at the desk, or?
Yes.
Yes, okay, it's part of our cost overall.
Is there I don't know exactly what our service levels are and what the coverage points are and all that sort of stuff, but is there a different way we ought to think about the coverage at each of the locations that we have for security? Not looking for an answer today, but just to consider it. I think I generally see 2 people at each of the security checkpoints. Is that the right sort of thing? Do you do one with roving? Do you do 2 at more of the more active places? Just something to think about that we might be able to help manage that expected cost increase as well.
Yeah, that's always up front, Scott, always. And quite honestly, PPC has done probably the best job of all our contractors in the past with repositioning their staff, whether it's, being at the screening station and then, being a relief, lunch or break relief, or going to the, after hours security stuff, or, going from some time at the courthouse, then maybe over at Broadway Center building, then over out at the precinct, and try to minimize the total number of staff and really allocate those to fit this matrix that's kind of crazy. But you're right, it's always something we look at.
Any questions for Steve? Thank you very much, appreciate it. Okay, so that's gonna take us to Superior Court. Come on. Okay. We gotta figure out where this is.
We're 310.
310.
310.
Ashley's
And I did print out our supplemental requests. I'm not sure exactly what all is included. Ooh, that could have been bad. Sorry about that.
Finish that off.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Okay, I think we're.
Okay. Well, as you see, we didn't prepare slides or those things. This is a lot of the same materials that we've presented for the last many years. As you know, we are in dire need of a 13th judge, and along with that comes a judicial assistant and a court reporter cost. We also have included some just small increases in some M&O items. That's just based on what we project that we will need to run our court. The $25,000 in attractive equipment is to replace some copy machines. As you know, we've shifted to where we buy those instead of lease them. So this would be a one-time cost that we would respectfully ask the board for, so we can replace some machines that need it. As well as our jury expenses. During the budget cuts back in 2020, we gave up a lot of our jury fees, and because of that was because we didn't have jury trials going on for a chunk of the pandemic, as well as when we did resume jury trials, they were at a slower pace just because of the space constraints that we had. But we're back in full gear. We have been really throughout 2021 and 2022. So for 2023, we believe that we'll need those funds back. And we also are requesting an IT tech that is assigned specifically to Superior Court. As we have moved towards remote hearings, our tech needs just grow. Other law and justice departments have an IT staff on their team, and Superior Court has not gotten that. So we'd like to have our own IT tech to help us, when our remote hearings fail or recording software fails. The IT tech that is assigned to Superior Court does a great job, but we really need somebody that's on our staff and we can help control their workload so that our needs are met. And that's just kind of providing the background for what we've requested. I'm sure Judge McKay has more and you may have questions.
And I'll field the questions. I believe that you all have been hearing the same thing from Superior Court for years and years and years. I know that I have spoken with the commissioners individually with regards to the need for the 13th judge. And very frankly, I think I've spoken to the fact that we need probably 16 judges. I will give you an example of that need. We have 2 judges who service or are assigned to a family law docket. They carry approximately 800 to 1,000 cases and can be up as high as 1,100 cases. Doesn't mean that those are all actively going on, but that's the case count that they handle. Because of our numbers and the unavailability of other judges who are already in trials, I had to take a family law judge, remove her from the docket that she was handling, and she tried 1 first-degree murder charge, and she is currently waiting for the jury to come back with regards to that. But in taking that judge from her assigned family law docket, that meant every hearing that she was handling for the week and a half that it was occurring had to be reset because there was nobody to then backfill her position. There are no commissioners that can backfill that position. I believe by her count, there were approximately 200 hearings of various types that had to be reset. And so she has 1 staff person that is both handling a jury, handling jury instructions, handling everything that goes on during a first-degree murder charge, and then having to move every single matter that was in front of her. And there are a lot of individuals who are unrepresented, who don't get the notices that get sent out, who haven't updated their addresses. So they are coming down to her courtroom, knocking on the door saying, what's going on? I'm supposed to be here. That 1 personnel is then out dealing with all of that while handling that. So that's an example of really what happens with our low staffing. I can give you other examples through our commissioners' dockets. The civil protection order law has changed. What the court is required to do to service those hearings and those members of the public have drastically increased. I want to say last week, the administrators of those dockets sent out an email saying there are 52 cases set for a Thursday docket. So 52 cases that we have the potential of touching. Our commissioners, and there are 2 that are assigned to this docket, can handle 8, maybe 9. So we have 8 that we know we can slot with 52 that are potentially ready. Now, not all of those can go forward because of service issues and other matters. But at the end of that day, and they sent out a call to help, and there were other judicial officers that had a slot or 2 that things could be slid into. There were 12 to 15 cases that could not be addressed. And those are protection order matters. They are urgent in nature. They could not be addressed. They then get continued. And they get continued to either a week out or 2 weeks out. And at the same time, they get continued. Then everything that is already filed comes right up into it. There's an example. I also know Mr. Sparber, Director Sparber, has sent out the red flag saying the jail is full. We've got to get these cases out. There are old cases. There are folks sitting in jail. And while we have responded to everything that we can, I know we are down transport. We are the chess pieces that get moved around. So I'll stop my tirade at this point in time and tell you, you already have the information, and I'll answer any questions that you may have of our budget issues.
There's 8 court commissioners, correct?
Correct.
What cases can't they take that an elected Superior Court judge can?
They cannot do a jury trial.
Just jury trials?
They cannot do a jury trial. They cannot do a civil trial unless the parties agree to accept them as a judge pro tem. So they are only handling those initial, for instance, family law temporary matters. They put the Band-Aid on the case before it gets to a judge. They are the commissioners that are handling all of the dependency dockets, the civil dockets, guardianship dockets. So they're just kind of at that level. At any time, if the parties do not like the decision that was made by that commissioner, they can revise. So that means that decision comes to a judge to hear the same thing all over again. And I can tell you those statistics based upon our society have gone up as well. So we are hearing lots of revisions, not necessarily by any fault of what the commissioners decided at the level, but because the parties are like, hey, I can get another shot at this situation, and they
So essentially they have an appeal process out of that, essentially, okay.
Correct.
What percentage of cases or that you deal with are jury trials, roughly?
Well, the tricky thing is that very few the cases don't all go to jury trial, but it's getting on that eve of trial and saying, we have a judge, we have a courtroom that's gonna hear that jury trial, that then will cause the case to settle. And that's why any day we may have 15 trials that are ready to go. So then one resolves and we backfill it, and one resolves, we backfill it. It's when we're at this place now where we don't even have the judge or courtroom to send that case out, that case isn't going to resolve. They're just gonna kick it out a month and maybe at that point it'll resolve. I mean, it's like 3% of our case, the cases really go to a jury trial, but it's that capacity to force them to resolve.
And so you have your supporting staff that go along with a judge. What additional staff are gonna be needed in the clerk's office? Because I know he's told us that if there is another judicial officer, I mean, going from 20 to 21 judicial officers, there would be, he would need additional staff. I assume he's coming in maybe next week or something, so I'll ask him, but if you could give us a preview, what's he gonna need?
Well, he would definitely need at least one staff person to handle that case, but based upon what I've seen, it's probably one or two or three maybe. I have a revolving door of clerks that come through my courtroom and they will get trained up, and then as soon as they're trained, they head off to a different docket. But they are trained for trial work versus processing work. That's probably a better question for him.
Okay.
But I do know in part of the request, because we have funding to have somebody help with our backlog, I don't have a courtroom to put them in. I don't have a clerk to place with them. I don't have a court reporter, and I don't have staff to then assist them try an old murder case or Class A felony that I know that Mr. Sparber would like to have out of the jail.
So would there be a capital cost with the 13th judge too?
Absolutely.
Or two gonna share a courtroom?
Absolutely, there's a capital cost. I mean, we have 20 judicial officers and 18 courtrooms right now. I just left a hearing to come here, and I'm looking at the parties going, I've gotta go to a meeting. I don't know where I'm gonna put you because I don't have a courtroom to now just say, come on back here on this day.
Okay.
I get off the bench, I'm making a call to our criminal administrator, our civil administrator, saying, all right, who do you have using my courtroom? All right, who's using this courtroom? Who's got this? And I have to call about 3 different people to see if I can actually use my courtroom so that I can continue what in essence is about another, maybe, I'm hoping, 15 to 20 minutes of actual court time, which then I have to address with making a decision. But, so that happens almost every day. And yes, there would be a capital cost to that. We have no space for what we are now. I think that Ms. Smith has indicated there is no place to put first appearances on, I can't remember what day that was, too many going through my mind, but
Where would we
yes.
put another courtroom?
You've already given up all the space here, so I don't know.
No, but I mean, would that create an issue if there's a superior courtroom not located in the courthouse?
For security purposes.
For security purposes,
For
yes.
transport, for sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
the courthouse isn't getting any bigger, so I mean,
It is not.
there's, I mean, logistical issues just with that.
Well, and I think that's the
And we gave up
frustration.
family law family law moved up to the clerk's old.
The prosecutors, family law, right? Yeah.
Yes, they took the
I mean,
space that used to be the treasurer's office.
And those are all choices that you guys get to make. All we can say is that we need space. And I know Judge Clark, met with folks back in 2019, because I was there, saying, we have significant space needs. And this needs to be in the 5-year plan.
Sure.
We're now at 2022 discussing 2023, and we still, all the space that was kind of earmarked for us, we've now been told that no, we can't have that space. So we don't know where to put courtrooms, because that isn't our choice to make. All we can communicate to you is we're in crisis.
So Scott, from the space study, was there any identified space?
Well, the space study it took in all of the requests from the departments. It didn't go and say, this is the location, this is the location. It gave us the ability to look at where the various needs are and then start to move the puzzle pieces around, if you will, to see how and can we even fit these needs. So there isn't anything in the space study that said Superior Court can go here. It highlighted some potential available space, and then the size of the space is going to be dependent, because your courtrooms are going to be pretty big. Your judges' chambers attached to that are going to be taking up some more space as well. So it's definitely a challenge to be able to point to and find another space on the campus. In the courthouse. There's been some discussions around the law library, and is that a large enough space for a courtroom? And then if so, where does a law library go? That sort of thing. So.
Yeah, what's impacted by it, because all of them want to be in the courthouse, but whatever could be moved, and the law library certainly is one of the conversations that come up. But the law library is necessary for the public too, so where does that go? Those kind of conversations, so. And I think there's also, there are two things. One is the 13th Superior Court judge, based on the current workload capacity, and the other one is the backlog that we've got to come up with a solution on to get the wheels turning a little bit quicker, and for the jails part of it, and what that looks like. So two separate issues, I think, that we're talking about.
So, how much of your cases, his challenge, is related to COVID, and how much of it is, in your opinion, related to just we're a bigger county now? I guess what I'm trying to do is say, I'm struggling with, if part of this is related to COVID and we can, either hire more commissioners to get us through that backlog, relieve some pressure for the judges so that they can take the more serious cases, is that something that we can do that would provide immediate relief for the Superior Court, and give us time to try and find a more permanent solution? Because building a courtroom and stuff is not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen. Well, I mean, realistically, it's a year or two project to try and find the space, and that's assuming that it's vacant. That's a big assumption because we don't have it. So we're going to have to move somebody else, then build a new courtroom and stuff. So that's not going to provide you immediate relief. So what can we do today that would provide for some relief for the court so that it would get you in a position to where you can focus on those issues that are unique to Superior Court judges, and some of that other low-hanging fruit we can, if it was a matter of hiring a couple more commissioners or something that could be satellited somewhere. I mean, is there a possibility of doing something? I hear what you're saying. I just don't have an immediate solution. So what can I do in the meantime?
Well,
does that make sense?
Yes, we have talked about seeing if we can't, because during COVID, we held jury trials off-site at the fairgrounds and at the convention center. And the judges that took trials there, it couldn't be out of custody, it was out of custody, criminal matters. Security got set up, couldn't be in custody, probably what relieves what Mr. Sparber's talking about, Director Sparber's talking about. Family law matters can move off-site so that you could free up courtrooms here. But we have to have first the authority to do that, and then staff to put there, because the clerk's office obviously are drastically short.
they would need that, and then our own staff to then get there. But what was set up, we set it up and then we took it down, and then I think we set up at the convention center and took it down. And it would need to be something that is there for just that purpose, and we do have some funding to address backlog. Part of your question is, can we differentiate between what's backlog and what's just population and explosion of the county? I don't know that I have the capability of doing that. All I know is that the fire hose has been on since I've been on the bench, and the fire hose didn't go off, and COVID didn't make that fire hose any smaller.
So my understanding is that the Monroe Court building still has some empty space. So if we could set up a temporary, 1 or 2 courtrooms over there, put some commissioners in there, and it's a, maybe it's a 1 or 2 year, permanent kind of a situation to provide some relief for you, that at least is a path forward that I think I could consider to try and, I hear where you're at. I hear he needs to get people out of the jail. So somehow we've got to find a solution that will provide some immediate relief. And I guess I'm looking for your wisdom to say, yes, we could do this. I mean, if we could set up a satellite in Monroe Court, and that's a matter of leasing some space for 2 years, I'd be willing to consider that and say.
We also need the personnel for that.
No, I understand.
Our backlog funding runs out June 30th, but I don't have
Right.
anywhere to put them right now.
Right.
To even start utilizing the money that's ticking away. Second half of that is, I would like to be able to advertise to have somebody come work for us. It might go better if I have somebody that says you might have a job for longer than, well, what's now?
9 months.
9 months. In addition, when it's just court commissioners, there are some potential issues with them, and Spokane County already exceeding our constitutional commissioners as we speak. So commissioners make me a little bit nervous, but from a constitutionality standpoint, way more information than you need right now, but yes, I would love to absolutely have that as an option, and we can make something like that. We have to make it work, because the second floor space that we had that we no longer have, that was supposed to be a quick fix. We'd have first appearances potentially in that right now, so that first appearance didn't have to use an open judge's position. So I still assumed the second floor was available for us, since we have part of it taken, but, well, an office taken.
Yeah, I understand status quo is not an option. So now I'm trying to figure out, okay, what can I do in the short term to provide some relief? That's kind of what I'm looking at.
Sure.
And stuff, so.
And I was gonna say maybe expand pro tem if we can, if it's possible. Judges, I don't know, because it is what it is as far as pro tems come. And maybe we could use district court, which would be constitutional pro tems, that if they were willing to do that as well. I think we're gonna have to throw a lot of resources at it right away, Commissioner, to get, and you can't even, my first journey out, I thought we'd just do it by length of stay in jail. You can't do it by length of, it's a complication of each case and how they're ruling, so it really will take a pretty detailed plan to work with Superior Court, but there's a pathway forward. But I think we're gonna have to have resources to do it.
Is the mobile unit that we were gonna use for intake, is that?
That could be an option for space, there's already stuff set up in there.
I mean, at least it
Yeah,
puts it
RC,
to a use.
get some use out of it.
And it's adjacent to the jail, you're walking across,
But we could potentially, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Commissioner. We could potentially also go security over that way, because it's secure ingress and egress to that, to there.
You got the fenced in
Correct.
walkway from the jail to that location.
Yeah.
But did we talk about moving budget over to the Public Works Department too, and freeing up that space? And then is Council for Defense over in the annex?
They're on the council and defense floor in the annex,
If that could move over to the Public Works building to open up that space too. So, I mean, that's where I think we've got to start to get creative with the space, Scott, kind of get you and Gil thinking sooner than later.
Yeah, Commissioner Fritz, we've been working on a preliminary plan to try to figure out a way to do this forward. But, And we'd be happy to get it all put together and kind of give you guys a bird's eye view at it, of what it might look like, but it's gonna take resources to do.
And is any of it ARP, can we use
Yeah,
ARP
that's-
dollars?
yeah.
Since part of it's trying to get, for
COVID
COVID-related
related.
purposes.
Definitely is qualified for ARP, however, I think it comes with a revenue replacement. There's not a specific category.
That's what I was eventually gonna get back to, maybe it's part of the COVID money or the ARP money to dedicate to this, I don't know.
Right, and that's part of why I wanna see that overall data, because I think it really does drive what we're doing on the law enforcement side, drives what happens on the criminal side, which drives what's happening in the courts. We really haven't put anything to courts.
And I will say that I try to just not make this all about Superior Court, because the other pieces to that puzzle are, you have to have public defenders that are up and to speed and ready to go, and I know that they have personnel issues and not enough people for the amount of cases that they have. You have to have prosecutors that are able to try the Class A felonies, the folks that are sitting in jail. So it goes just beyond, obviously, a judge and a courtroom and our staff and a clerk. Clerks are at a premium these days as well.
That's kind of why I'm looking at it as like a task team. Because you'd have to develop something, the resources of all the departments to say, this is allocated for this purpose, and this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna work on the backlog at the jail. And what is, how much is that, and what's the backfill on that? So,
Some urgency to it.
but we've been working on it. I just talked to him yesterday, I sent him an email too. So we're definitely going after it, so.
There are some public sector categories around effective service delivery and administrative needs, as well as just a public sector workforce other. So possibly could fit in those, but if not, definitely revenue replacement would be an option.
What would the next steps be to explore the Monroe Court leasing and trying to create a courtroom or two? I mean, even just that. We do have pro tems that we could bring in if we had we would need a court clerk. But I've never done something like that, so what would be the steps to explore that?
Well, we'd have to reach out to the real estate agent over there, see what space they may have or may not have, and understand and kind of get some terms of that and see what the expenses might be. So that's something that we can do through Gail reaching over there. I've got a question though, of how we've talked about the concept, I mean, in a couple little small groups of a night court type of thing. So we could certainly grow more courtroom space, which is challenging because you have to have it, you have to find out where to move people out. But we've got courtrooms that are dark, let's say 5 to whatever time, and if you're bringing in, it's always hard to change someone's work schedule when they're here today. But if we're talking about adding more, is there opportunities within the types of flows of cases and stuff that you could repurpose a courtroom in the off hours to be able to absorb some of this stuff, even for the interim period of time, or planning for the future?
That's an interesting point, because that's what Hillsborough does. And I think that's also what Montgomery did when you and I were back there and stuff. So that is not unusual to be able to maximize the utilization of those very expensive resources.
Most of the departments are asking for more people anyway.
Well, and
You
you
see what
could
I'm
then
saying?
hire those people to do a night shift, so they're hired specifically to do a night shift, so
With the
your
expectation coming in.
your 15th, and 16th, 14th, 15th, and 16th judicial positions, which our numbers say we should have.
Right.
Maybe you hire those from a night court position, including the prosecutors that would go with that, the public defenders that would go with that. Obviously, you all know what it takes to put security in here. Clerks that are specifically hired for a night shift, which is a whole different troop. I don't know if it's financially feasible, but
So we'd save on rent and would be able to utilize this building to a greater length of time.
Is there enough volume of cases and types of cases that could be done in an off hours sort of situation that are more appropriate in kind of a night situation.
I don't really see anything civil being a night court situation.
Criminal.
Protection
Criminal
orders
potentially.
though, I
Maybe.
mean, potentially, and
Potentially.
family law motions. Maybe.
Maybe.
Because people wouldn't have to take time off work. I will say, it wouldn't be realistic to do jury trials at night because they're jurors. We have a hard enough time to get them to come down here, much less tell them to come down from 5 to 10.
And with the pro tems, do you have to have the same security?
Oh, absolutely.
How much you guys have, how much did you get in that fund for COVID fund? What was the amount of that again?
$590,000,
590,000.
right around there, could have been 575. Ballpark.
Okay. And you have until when to expend it?
The end of June.
30th.
Any other questions? Thank you.
You're very welcome. If anybody has further questions, please let me know. I might get my hearing done, so I don't have to find someplace else to put that. If I haven't lost my parties. Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so did we have district court early?
They're not here yet.
We get district court.
Not till 11.
Who was coming from district court, do you know, Gary?
John Witter and, it would have been Amy Mauer, but she
That's
is
better,
out of
yeah.
town, so,
That's better, isn't it?
there's another judge filling in for it.
Recess for 5 or 10?
Yeah, I think so you've got to leave at 11:30.
Ideally 11:30, I could probably stretch it to 11:40 if it would help you.
So it's just, go till, take a recess till 11:25.
Is there?
Okay, we're gonna take a recess until 11:25 and we'll be back.
Do you have a temporary?
You guys could also,
Very good, thank you. We are now back from our small recess that we took. It is 11:29 and we are back. And so welcome, we have district court here. And so I'm gonna let you state your names and titles for the record for us.
I'm Judge Jennifer Fossbender from Spokane County District Court.
Sherry Hansen, Assistant Court Administrator from District Court.
I'm John Witter, the Court Administrator for Spokane County District Court.
Thank you all for joining us today to talk about the budget.
And thank you for having us. Sorry Judge Mauer is unable to be here today. She's at a training in Washington DC that she was appointed by the Supreme Court to attend.
Yes, that's exciting.
Yes.
Okay, so we do need to figure out where in our binders we need to be going to, so I apologize if we didn't get that done, we should have got that done ahead of time.
190 is the start of the district court.
190, okay.
And just again, for the big numbers, their base budget submission for '23 in the general fund was $6.3 million. And they're asking for supplemental requests totaling $58,000.
Then I think we can let you go ahead and talk about, we're just having everyone talk about their supplemental requests.
Thank you. And my apologies, this is the first time I've had to attend one of these meetings, so I'm not sure exactly the format of this process, but as far as we have three total supplemental budget requests. The first one is for these two expenditure codes. We've got 4210 telephone with a requested increase of 15,000. This is for our cell phones. Actually, this is for the professional cell phones or supplemental cell phones that are used by the judges to accommodate the officer requests for search warrants and during the day, middle of the night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Also our supervisory staff with regards to facilitating any phone calls. And of course, district court has been using their trial court improvement fund or their TCIA funds to pay for these cell phones. That is not necessarily appropriate to be used to continually pay for these cell phones that are used in our regular course of business that are required. Also certainly want to keep away from using our personal cell phones for business functions. And so we're asking to have that covered by the M&O. That way we can get that out of our trial court improvement fund, which is more appropriately allocated for improving the court functions. Also with regards to 4540, the rental lease of software, AV capture, as you know, we are a court of limited jurisdiction, and with a court of limited jurisdiction, we are required to record the court proceedings, both for court rule and for appellate rules. With that, 2017, we switched over from FTR Gold to this AV capture. That also was a function that was covered by our TCIA, or Trial Court Improvement Fund, to supplement the new lease of software and such. But again, it was temporary, and that's why we're asking that it be covered by in the supplemental request for the M&O, because it is a required court function for which the county does or should be covering the cost of that. So we can take it out of our Trial Court Improvement Fund. And then also finally, with regards to these other expenditure codes, office supplies, publication, banking services, telephone, postage, travel, juror charges, and other. Continually since 2019, we've been over our budget. Our actual budget at the end of the year has been over on these costs, and I think pretty much everybody knows the cost of inflation. So with that comes the request to beef up each one of these different categories to cover those costs. And I can show as far as since 2019 that we have been over in all of those sections. And so we'd like to be able to get caught up on those. And so those are our requests here today. Any questions?
So the travel is an increase of 8,000 or?
Yes.
Okay,
And
what?
so we have been, because of COVID and such, nobody's been necessarily traveling for conferences, and everything's been done by Zoom. I can even say our most recent spring conference was still done by Zoom. But the trend is going back to in-person conferences, and such does require travel.
How many judges usually travel to those types of things?
We have 8 judges total, 1 commissioner, and with that, we try to have at least 2 remaining on campus, if that's the case. So we try to do some kind of facilitation with regards to rotation, because we are required to.
2 would stay, not 2 go to the conference?
Correct.
Oh, so 6 would go to the conference?
Yeah, because the judges are required to maintain certain credits.
Yeah,
to maintain our,
CLEs.
yes, to maintain our status.
Okay.
Also, we are gonna have 2 new judges here come the beginning of the year, and they are required to attend judicial college. And so that would also facilitate the conference charges for those 2 new judges.
Does that travel cost include any non-exempt, meaning overtime eligible employees, or is that specific to judges only?
Specific to judges. And then also as far as our
Administration as well.
administrators as well, because they have certain conferences that they're required to attend.
I asked that, commissioners, there's very clear rules on how we're supposed to pay overtime eligible employees for travel time, overtime, and it adds up pretty quickly, so.
And I can say specific, as far as our court clerks in and of themselves, aside from maybe some mileage costs to attend, we have a training that we're looking at having them attend here come in the next month or 2. There might be some slight mileage costs, but aside from that, our probation officers are attending a conference, but that's covered by their own, the probation budget.
So on the travel topic, I'm looking in your budget, and in the mental health court, you've got budgeted travel of 27,000. The last couple of years have been trending about 8,000 and 4,000 year to date this year. And over in your another one for your travel, and that one is only 2,000, and you've been trending around 65 to 23. So it looks like you got plenty of travel budget, just move it around to cover what that need would be.
The mental health budget is covered by the 1/10 of 1% for tax purposes. That is a specific budget just for mental health treatment court.
Okay.
And so those funds can only be used for the mental health treatment court. And so our probation officers, for example, that are covered under mental health treatment court, their travel costs are covered by that specific line item.
And then you've also got this other category of $80,000 in your civil ex parte, and there's been no dollars spent this year, and there's $10,000 that was spent in 2021. So what's that?
The civil doofy funds, so every time somebody files a civil claim, small claims, name changes, those specific funds go into that category. It pays for 2 clerks, I believe. Yes, it pays for 2 clerks and any improvements that are needed to be had in the civil department, as well as the pro tem costs. So if we have a pro tem that covers a civil docket, that comes out of that budget. So it is a specific budget.
It can only be used by the revenues in that?
In that, yes, correct.
Okay, so reducing it doesn't necessarily help give any sort of room elsewhere in the budget?
Unfortunately not.
Okay.
So I noticed you guys didn't ask for any additional headcount, which thank you. But then looking at your projected spend for 2022 and knowing that we've run some vacancies off and on throughout the year, do you guys feel that there's any way to balance some of your M&O ask by not maybe needing to replace some of the open positions you guys have right now, or do you feel that you truly need those positions to be fully staffed?
I think the look on their faces is the answer to that question. We have been able to use our unspent salaries on extra help. We have one particular clerk in, for example, that was retired that has come back to help. We've used unspent funds also to ensure that Commissioner Doima can remain on staff while we're in this transition, because we're beefing up jury trials and such. And then also the budget committee was fortunate enough for us to use unspent salaries for a few other matters, but I understand that that is not able to be rolled over again. And so that's where we're asking to have these other line items beefed up because we can't use the unspent salaries for other things.
Do you feel you're gonna be able to fill the 8 vacant positions, 8.4 vacant positions?
We're extremely hopeful.
Yeah.
We're all
Ms.
hopeful.
Hanson?
Yes, we're all
Yes.
hopeful. We're hopeful.
Realistically,
Yeah, realistically.
gonna be able to fill them?
If I can
I
get
mean, and I'll tell you,
applicants,
that I'm not just asking you, we've had some other departments that are, short 15 positions and they want 4 more. It's like, you can't fill these 15, you're gonna be able to fill 19, and so.
Well, and I can say, I mean, honestly speaking, if we can get the contract ratified, I mean, that's the issue that we have right now, is that we're advertising for court clerks, but yet they can go out. For example, my oldest son makes more at Starbucks than you do as a starting clerk. So until, certainly if it gets ratified, then automatically, yes, the wage will increase because that was already approved by the salary review that was over a year ago now, I believe. Couple years ago now. So yes, we are hopeful to get those positions filled. Certainly once we can start advertising at higher rate.
Okay.
Yeah, that's been our big setback when we call applicants. Tell them, this is where you're gonna get paid. They say, thanks, but no thanks. Here's a good example for an account tech 2 position that historically we'd have 30 to 40 applicants. We've had one position open since October. So we get 2 applicants every time we post an account tech.
we've only had a total of 8 applications come in since October.
So we're hopeful.
Okay.
So did I hear you right, that you said you're getting 2 more judges?
Two judges are
replacements.
retiring.
Retiring, okay,
Yes.
very good, thank
Yes,
you.
and so, yes, when they start the position, they have to go through judicial college.
And then confirming, the one, if I remember right, there was a court commissioner that was brought on to help with backlog for 2022, but that is not, that's being removed out of the budget for 23, correct? It's not in the budget, okay. Okay,
Are you gonna be presiding this year?
I am.
Okay.
congrats.
Congrats.
Mike.
I'll be seeing you around.
You'll look a lot older in 2 years.
Yeah.
And like when people retire, they look younger, like you look older.
Fantastic.
Yes, you can do
Party, okay, and this is, again, similar things I've told all the other departments that have come in, so you understand kind of where the entirety of the general fund looks. All of the departments that have requested supplemental requests, the total is 9.3 million. Those are not in the preliminary budget right now. The preliminary budget is showing a deficit of 3.2 million, which we've got some work to try to solve on, so I ask you to take that into consideration with your supplemental budget requests. And also kind of what Ashley was pointing out earlier and Commissioner Kearns was asking about is take a hard look at your projected expenses for this year and find out if there's an opportunity to reallocate some of your existing expenses to cover. You're only asking for $50-some thousand, but your projected expenses, I believe, and there's a sheet right there for you. You can take that. Your projected expenses are showing that you'll be about $700,000 under where you're asking for budget next year. So seems to me like there's opportunities to absorb that in. While we all want to be fully staffed, the hiring climate that we're in, and while we hope that with a new contract it'll help solve on some of those things, we're still going to be running vacancies. As you hire someone, someone's going to leave. So the reality is you're going to run budget, or you're going to run headcount vacancies during the year. So I think there's some opportunities within there as well to do some recognition in the budget of a headcount vacancy. We're already building those into some of the departments. I don't know if we did that into district court. We do anything in the district court, Gary or Tessa? No, I don't think we did. So there's probably an opportunity within there to build in a headcount vacancy, recognizing that we're always going to have turnover. Just the reality. Again, we'd love to be fully staffed, but we're not going to be. So I think we can address some of your needs within the existing budget without having to ask for additional budget.
Well, and the one thing that I would point out with regards to at least 2 of our requests, the increase for cell phones and AV capture, those are both court rule and statutorily mandated. Going back again to the TCIA funds, Trial Court Improvement Act, specifically states as to what we should be using those funds for. These are not should be properly included in that budget any longer. Certainly there's other departments that have their cell phones covered, so they don't have to use their personal cell phones. I think across the board here, people are picking up cell phones. I see 2 cell phones over here, prosecutor's office, sheriff's office, superior court judges. So continually district court has been covering the costs of that, which we don't believe is necessarily appropriate. AV capture, again, even administratively appellate court rule and our local CRLJ requires court proceedings to be reported. So, I was gonna say, and we've been quite fiscally responsible with it. And as you pointed out, we're only asking for a nominal amount compared to other departments.
No, certainly you know that stuff better than we do as far as what you can and can't use expenses for. So I would encourage you to make sure it's not being absorbed in out of a revenue bucket that's not supposed to be spent for, but looking at other parts of your department budgets that can absorb those costs in.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much. Appreciate
you
your
for having
time.
us. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey Jen, is there,
Yeah.
is there a period between the ones that are retiring and the ones that are coming on board? Is there like space between those? How much time is between the two of them, or they just come on immediately?
Come on immediately.
Immediately?
January 9th is the last day for our 2 retiring judges.
Okay,
They'll start.
thank you.
And remind me who, I know, Judge Hayes, right?
Judge Hayes and Judge Wilson.
Donna's leaving, that's crazy.
Yeah, I know.
She's
It's
like a horrible.
crazy weird end of the era.
I know. Hope I still get my Christmas card every year.
I know.
You may give that up though.
I hope not.
There's no reason for it.
Yeah, you always get it around Thanksgiving. Sweet, okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Okay, so I think that concludes our morning meeting and we will reconvene at our 2 o'clock consent agenda. Thank you all very much.